Welcome back, Flyers Nitty Gritty fans, to Getting Gritty with It with your host, Yariv Wolok, for a special episode with my buddy, Anthony Merrigan, back for another episode. Ant, welcome back, buddy.
Thanks, man. Good to be back. I haven't been on in a while, but been obviously staying in tune with what you guys are doing with the nitty gritty. So it's been awesome.
Yeah.
You guys are keeping up with it even during these tough times, we'll call them. But been listening to the level up stuff as well. So congrats on getting that rolling.
Thanks,
something a little different. So it's excited to be talking Flyers hockey for the first time in a long time.
Yeah, dude, the level up, always level up stuff has actually been really interesting.
Yeah, it's cool.
And having conversations with people inside. There's still more episodes coming. It's definitely challenging to get guests, like, don't get me wrong, but I do have another guest coming up, somebody we grew up with. I don't want to say it right now. Most people won't know him, but I do recommend listening to it. I don't know obviously what it's going to be like, but it's definitely going to be interesting. I grew up with the guy, and no doubt about it, you're going to hear some stuff that you probably haven't heard before.
Yeah, it's funny because, like, when you ask people to do podcasts, like, I'm always down to do one.
Yeah.
But a lot of people are pretty, like, nervous about doing them, like, whether it's about opening up or they just aren't good on the microphone or in front of the camera. So it's a tough task for sure.
Well, now you're, like, in studio, which, by the way, this is, like, first post-COVID.
Yeah, I like
COVID. Well, obviously, Anthony's been here before, but first post-COVID show, and hopefully we can do more stuff like this in the future. I only have one mic right now, but we'll upgrade in the near future. But hopefully more, like, in-person stuff. You know, people are in the stadiums, bringing friends in the house.
Yeah, I love it.
Okay.
So much better. Makes for, like, a better feel vibe,
I
the
know,
whole
right?
thing. So just, like I said, excited to get back to talking about the Flyers.
Yeah, hell yeah. Well, actually, real quick, let's because we're going to go into Flyer stuff. We're going to go pretty deep into that. You've been doing some stuff with hockey locally. Do you want to give that a shout out actually right now?
Yeah, so just trying to grow the game on the youth side of things. We started a youth league called the Junior Prospects League. Basically, kids 14 to 17, some of the best kids in the area.
That's locally,
right?
Northeast Philly.
Yeah, Northeast Philly. It's right now
Jersey,
because Philly
right?
is shut down. We're doing it out of Feasterville.
Oh, okay,
Sportsplex.
Feasterville. Okay.
But yeah, we'll be back in NERC eventually. So, but yeah, just trying to grow the sport, man, and just with Mad Hockey Leagues, trying to take over everything in the Northeast as much as we can in this area, and getting to go away to cool places like California and stuff like that to play hockey, promote the leagues, everything like that, doing podcasts for our leagues, just trying to take it to the next level, like you're doing with the always level up stuff. So yeah, excited to I appreciate you mentioning that, but yeah, excited to get that stuff rolling. And again, I feel like September, it's like what we consider our fiscal year.
Okay.
Right. Once we start back in September, we'll have like this completely ironed out. So first year, just working out all the kinks of the business, and then rocking and rolling. So,
all right.
Yeah.
Well, that's good. If people want to check out your stuff, like, where can they check out if they're interested in the league or getting involved or playing?
Yeah. So you just go to madhockey.org and you'll have all the information. The website's phenomenal. It's got all the information you need for our social media accounts, for our podcast stuff, for registration, sign-ups, information, private lessons, whatever it is. So.
Perfect. Yeah, and COVID's ending, and obviously if you've been spending a lot of time inside, this might be a good time to start playing hockey again. And again, this is local hockey mostly, but yeah, keep playing hockey. All right. Yeah. Let's get into Flyer stuff because we have. Actually, let me give a shout out to the sponsor because I always forget. Shout out to Jim Steaks on South. Yeah, they are. They're really awesome. And dude, it's funny because I grew up like seeing all those pictures, and it seems like the worlds are kind of coming together, like involved with the Flyers, and somehow Jim's is like involved with me, and I'm like,
that's great.
Yeah,
I used to live near the other one, right off of Cotman Avenue. It's not there any longer, but yeah, Jim's, the way they just like chop up the steak so finely and the cheese just melts, it's the best.
You gotta wait. What it is though is waiting in line.
Yeah.
And you have to smell the onions for like about 30, 45 minutes.
Yeah.
At that point, you're about to strangle somebody
you're like about to just order 2 steaks.
They're never out. Well, they're never out. You know, you walk up and there's a mountain of meat.
Yeah,
so
just dicing it up. It's the best though. But the one on South Street's by far the best tasting one.
Word.
But yeah, I haven't had a Jim steak in a minute. So.
Yeah. Well, low carb diet.
Yeah.
Doesn't help. All right, let's get into shout out to Jim Steaks. Let's get into hockey. All right, so the Flyers, they're in a little bit of a tailspin, a little bit of a whirlwind. Let's just say our expectations were not met this year.
Absolutely.
And I would say kind of across the board. I don't want to pretend like we can diagnose the problem. We'll go into a bunch of stuff, but we'll have theories thrown out as we go through this. But let's talk about the recent games. Flyers do have surprisingly a couple wins in a row already, and are looking for their third win against the immensely struggling Buffalo Sabres. They almost blew that game. Down 3-0, where the team just seemed unfocused and unmotivated to win, which again is concerning. But then they kind of turned it around. AV pulls some kids, create some problems, I guess, or not create some problems. I'm sorry, create some energy to remove some problems, I guess. And they do. They come back and they win. What do you think about that game, and how do you feel going into this game?
So what I would hope is that going into this game that they just remember the last game and they're like, we can't do that again.
Right.
The issue I see with the team is exactly that game just portrays the rest of the issues throughout the season. Inconsistencies. 2 periods of nothing. Not good play.
Why do you think?
Teamwork.
Well, what do you think that is, man?
So, to your point, you were saying they benched a couple people in the third period. It was Patrick,
Farabee, and Lindblom.
Were all benched
again,
in the third.
And you can say Farabee, but those are all young kids.
Yeah, and
Farabee's
been carrying the team the whole year. So
exactly.
Kind of like just like a little glitch in the matrix there. But I do like how the vets did kind of carry it in that third. And you could see even when Coots scored, or I don't know if he got credit for the goal, but he's on his back, he's cheering. It looked like they had more energy, right? Why? I think Chuck Fletcher kind of alluded to it. He said something along the lines of like, we don't have the right fit. And he said that was my fault, So I don't know if you caught that. But I don't know if it's not the right fit, because if you look at the roster and you look at the roles that need to be played, putting those guys, I know when we spoke about this, prior to the season, if you put all those guys in those places, it seems like it would be a perfect match. And that's why I think a lot of people... and I feel like a lot of people picked them to take a run this year because they saw, wow, look at their third-line center. It could be Patrick, it could be a Lawton, whoever it is. And I feel like they're just not meeting the expectations. But from a player's perspective, and obviously not at the level that they're at, right? But a player's perspective, I watch things like when Myers handles the puck now, you could tell he's nervous with the puck. He doesn't want to make a mistake because they feel like every mistake they make is going to end up in the back of the net. So, and I think that's causing them to play super inconsistent, super tight. They're not playing loose. They're not playing like having fun while they're playing. And that would just be my kind of perspective of it, is that they're just so nervous that they're going to make a mistake, it's going to crush them, and they're not going to be able to come back.
So what does that tell you?
It's two things, right? It's either a lack of leadership, which I can't imagine that, because G specifically, would just go with him.
Yeah.
Everyone says what a great leader he is. Not just his teammates of Team Canada.
I never heard a single negative thing about him.
Exactly.
Beyond extremely positive.
And we know Poverov's work ethic, right? Yes. You consider him the leader of that D corps.
Yager-like work ethic.
Exactly. Agreed. Like just a beast.
Jake will call you out immediately.
So I don't know if it's a leadership. I mean, the only other thing I could think of, and you're hearing a lot of it now, is the coach. Maybe they're just not responding to the coach. And that can sometimes play a part. I've been on those teams where coach didn't resonate with the team.
That is what I'm feeling. And now, again, that does not mean I think AV is a bad coach.
Absolutely.
Because I think that's silly. Because the idea that he's a bad coach after having, especially immediate success here. But I do worry because I see patterns that I've seen in the past. One of which, Michel Therrien, if you look at his history,
right.
He has a history of behaving this way.
Absolutely.
Who ironically is very good friends with AV, is he tends to name a bunch of people in the media, clear cut across the board. He starts saying it's because of this, sometimes the captain. We might see that at some point, and then they're not around that much longer.
Right.
Because at a certain point, you can't actually change your entire squad out, but you can change your coach and get more out of that squad.
It's the easier fix of the rest.
Exactly. Now, I don't think the Flyers are going that route, and I don't think they necessarily want to go that route, and I don't think even Drew or the team wants to see that happen, because it's a reflection of them. 100%. I don't think they look at AV as a guy as like their enemy. I do want to make that clear.
Yeah.
But do they trust him to lead back? Do they trust in his system?
That's different, right? So you see with players when they get traded sometimes, like they maybe have some animosity towards that player when he's on another team. It takes a little while to build that trust. So I'm wondering, like you said, is there trust within whether it's his system? Like your system can only go so far. At the end of the day, effort's a big part of it. Winning battles is a big part of it. Defending is a big part of it, especially now because how good fourth line players are. They can snipe, they can wheel, they can dangle. right? So I think you may have the winning formula there. It might just be a little bit of a trust thing.
Yeah.
And that's going to translate right on the ice. I can tell you that for a fact. If you don't trust your system or you don't trust your coach, it's going to translate on the ice.
But they did, right?
Yeah.
So what happened along the way that this team, and it can't just be Matt Niskanen. Listen, I get that.
Agreed.
I even believe that Niskanen is a humongous addition to a locker room. I will own up to that. But we're talking about a tailspin that nobody saw happening. Like we were losing to the Sabres 3-0 with zero effort after watching our season fall in front of us and players knowing that they could get traded or benched or waived.
It's bizarre. It's like a bizarro world, right? That's the only way to look at it is like, you know, when Flyers have gone on losing streaks before, tight games, overtime losses, you're like, oh my God, they can't win a shootout. We've heard those things before.
Right.
I've never seen Flyers teams get blown out like that. Like 9 goals, like that is just multiple times, right? Like, who does that happen to?
And that's where I'm looking at, like, what am I watching? I know it's not a talent issue. I know everybody, people say to me online, I'm sorry, it's not.
No.
It's if it was, then they're all gone. But that's not the case. These guys this didn't happen overnight. There's something that happened slowly in this locker room that has clearly festered to this point. The concern is that we've seen it happen before. And we can say Dave Haxtell wasn't a great coach, and I would argue he wasn't.
Yeah.
I think he was a good coach, though. He wasn't bad. He wasn't as terrible as people think he is. Like, look, Knobloch is doing not too bad behind the Rangers bench, right? We fired him. Like, these guys aren't incompetent, like, losers.
Not at all.
You know what I mean? And I don't think that about AV or Terrian or Yo. So I'm curious as to, like, what happened in this locker room where it seems to me this team, I'm going to get cheesy with it.
Yeah.
They don't fly together.
Yeah.
Like, I say it. Dude, when they go up the ice, they're alone.
They
a lot
are.
of times you're seeing 1 or 2 guys. They very rarely operate in a unit, and that's why our defense sucks, because that's the largest requirement of defense.
100%. And when you're defending the whole time, by the time you get the puck and you want to get up in the offensive zone, you're gassed, right? So, you, like you just said, you'll see a Farabee who's carrying it 1-on-3, and he has no other option than to dump it and get off the ice and let us trap and let them try to come into our trap, which, again, it's not the right way to play hockey, right? You have to be driving the play.
Right.
And you'll notice good teams, right? I was just watching the Avs the other day, right? They have guys that get the puck in the zone. They're not dumping it. They're carrying it across the blue line. Once they get across, they have support. They have option 1. They have option 2. Third option to dump it in, right? And the Flyers just simply aren't, like you said, flying together. As corny as it is, it's spot on, right? So it's just frustrating because we've seen the Flyers over years struggling in the D zone, right? Coverage collapsing, missed coverages, like I think AV called out Voracek on that one on the first goal the other day. That stuff's going to happen, but how much they get hemmed in is really affecting their offensive play.
And that's a product of the team play.
100%.
And a lot of times, even when we're I'll say shitting on Phil Myers, and he's had a rough year this year. And don't get me wrong, a lot of the goals are his fault, especially when it comes down to being the last line of defense. But this is the one thing I want to point out. Typically, that's what you're looking at, is a guy,
100%.
You're watching 2 other guys already got beat before they got to Phil Myers. And now Phil Myers has 2 guys around him, and he misses the back door over and over and over again. And then I look at that and go, well, is that a systems issue where they're just not getting, like, it's just not working? I don't know, man. The one thing I've talked about this a lot on the podcast. The one thing I hate the most, and I've heard very smart hockey people say this, that this is a young man's game, and I think that is the biggest line of bullshit I've ever heard.
Yeah, I mean, look who won last year, right? Vets.
Who wins every year?
Yeah.
There are never kids that win at all, ever.
No.
And for a reason. And the reason that they say it's a young man's game, because for the same reason the companies that don't have money hire young people. They take less money. And that's why young people are in the league now more than before.
100%. And it's that salary cap error, right, where you need a good mix. And I think we talked about this via text message. It's almost like, they have the really young and they have, older veterans, not older, but, getting up there. It's like, where's that middle ground at, right? They're like kind of missing a few of those middle key pieces, like a Ghost, right? He's 27 years old. Obviously, we'll get into that in a little bit, but it's
get into that next. Actually, let's skip the Ghost right after you're done. Go ahead.
It's just interesting because we didn't see this last year, but and this is going to be me being positive, right, and trying to look at the glass half full. We've seen Flyers teams run off 10 games. And I specifically remember in their 10-game winning streak a couple years ago, they weren't blowouts. They were shootout wins, one-goal wins, hard-fought wins. That's what got that team going and then rolling into playoffs. And then obviously, you know, last year with the whole COVID scenario, kind of just threw a stop right in the middle of their momentum. We saw them pick it up in that round robin. And then since then, it's been like helter-skelter, in my opinion.
I do think, to your point, I think things have a way of balancing out as well, and people should be aware of that. Like, this team is too talented to play as poorly as they are. Eventually, just based on pride, like, they'll play better. Doesn't mean they'll make the playoffs and they'll be good enough to win anything, but it should level out at least some of the chaos that we're saying. Like, same thing with Buffalo. Like, Buffalo will not continue to lose every single game.
No.
Which is the risk, I guess, of tonight's game. We're actually filming before the Flyers play. What day is it today again?
Wednesday.
It's a Wednesday. Wednesday.
I know, it's COVID world.
Yeah, so. Right. So Wednesday night, you know, and listen, my anticipation the Flyers should win this game. I anticipated that last game too. They did win. Having said that, you know, they give you a heart attack in between.
Right.
Let's talk about Ghost.
Yes.
Because I was about to talk about like new voices in the room, and I'm realizing like they're removing a voice from the room, kind of.
Right.
But not really. It's just I want to say this. I don't know if this move. I don't think that AV and Ghost get along. I'll make that very clear. I think there's clearly a problem there.
I think so as well.
Yeah. Between the head coach and Gostisbehere. I don't think Fletcher is as personal with it. I actually think the waiver move is a lack of confidence from AV. Plus a combination of Fletcher being like, okay, well, if you're not going to play him and I need to bring in another defenseman, I believe that I can risk passing him through waivers without losing him for nothing.
Right.
Because most people... And I want to make this clear. This isn't... You can look at Ghost having zero value. I would look at this trade deadline as something very different, where you're going to see money being the biggest thing.
Absolutely.
Not because of the salary cap, actually, but because every team is losing money.
Yeah.
And so that means teams not like the Flyers, who have Comcast, who are a multi-billion-dollar corporation and can handle millions of dollars in losses and can make that up in a playoff revenue or can at least work into it. Some of these teams are not even going to scratch the surface of that. They're not taking $4.5 million for the next 3 years if they think they're going to be losing money every year. The highest value things will be draft picks this year and taking on cap salary, which is why Fletcher's opening up his cap, because he's probably going to take on a contract right now.
I would assume so.
That we will expose probably an expansion.
Yeah, and I think, you know...
Less of risk, though.
Right, and that's the thing. The expansion's another factor into this. Like, go figure.
Seattle's going to have to play it differently.
Oh, my gosh. Like,
they're not going to be able to make money the same way either.
No, absolutely. So if you think about that, a lot of people think that this is part of the bigger picture, right? And
I mean,
I would agree. I would agree it is.
Whatever
right?
that is.
Whatever it is, we don't know, right? Only Chuck Fletcher and their staff knows, right? So at the end of the day, until we see how it all pans out, I don't think we could even say this is a good move, bad move, indifferent move. It's just a move at this point. He's not playing tonight, right, from everything I'm reading. So that's interesting because I think they were talking, I forget who it was, they were talking about, does that affect, I think it was Lawton, does it affect you if he's waived and then he's in the lineup? And he's like, no, we just feel bad. Like, you know, it's his friend. He talks about he was drafted with him. He came up with him, right? So I think, if anything, you know, they should be playing for Ghost tonight in a way, right? I don't think there's any animosity between him and his teammates, whether there is between him and the coach. And you know what? You're telling me Torts doesn't have that animosity with probably 5 or 6 guys on his roster? I'm sure he does.
I'm not convinced that it's so much a personal thing as it is just a game on the ice.
Yeah, gameplay thing. Like Line A. It's a gameplay thing.
The weirdest thing, though, is Alexander Appleyard has a great tweet about this. I should have had it ready for this, but essentially Ghost's underlying numbers are the best on the team, which, again, people know me. I don't give a flying F about analytics, but at the same time, still, underlying numbers, again, contextually for this team, are the best on the team, plus I think he has 11 points in the past 16 games. Yeah. Again, I wouldn't look at these games and go, oh, Ghost is the problem.
Yeah, absolutely not.
So that's why I see, is it an attitude thing? Have they had exchanges on the ice? Does that really mean it's the end, or is this team really going through something pretty harsh?
Yeah, and it's hard because
we didn't even mention Hart yet.
Sorry, right, yeah, but they're not getting a lot of practices, right? We know this. No team
or
is,
FaceTime,
right? Or FaceTime. A lot of teams are going through that though, right? So Again, I don't know. You know, we heard about when Kevin Hayes came here. He talked about how tight this locker room was,
and
how they're a brotherhood, that way. Right? And it appeared that way. And again, we're not getting as much from the team in general, right? And there's not as many interviews and things like that being conducted, so we don't know if that's changed a little. But it's really the only thing you could point your finger at and go, there's something like deep rooted in this team. Like there's an issue.
Well, do you think it's just festering losses more than anything?
It could be frustration, like
just repeated over and over the whole season. Even the time we were winning was frustrating.
Yeah, because they weren't clean. But I remember saying to you,
take those wins.
Yes, 100%.
I said that at the time.
We
People argued with
when
me.
We watched the last time I was here. At your nice home here. But when last time I was here, I said like, that's a sign of a good team, though. When they're winning games, not playing well, you're like, that's a sign of a good team. So they still are, like you said, the talent, everything, they're still a good team.
I mean, they still have a winning, kind of.
Yeah.
They have a winning record to a degree. They're still in a playoff race, even though this month of March, I would agree, is a complete nightmare.
Yeah, but they could have a great month of April, and we go and look at it, and we go, okay, the month of March was really bad, but if the team's trending at the right time, maybe, you don't forget about it, obviously, right? You always got to remember those things. Just like when you lose a tough game, they say, remember that loss, but also let it go in the same way. So I know, like, personally, when I'm losing games, I get frustrated, and I tend to do things that I don't want to do. I tend to overplay. I tend to overcommit. I tend to do too much, right? And we're talking about me.
Tend to break sticks on the ice.
Yeah, break sticks on the ice.
I mean, but that's kind of what I'm talking about.
Yeah,
here, right?
like that kind of stuff. It's frustration, and it really does.
And AV is not well. While I actually do think he's a very socially apt person, like I do think he's very aware, but I don't think he babies much. Mm-mm. So I think if you have problems, I don't think you're going to talk to him much about those issues. Right. You're probably talking maybe the assistants, or even below them. Yeah, maybe. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So, I mean, again, I think it'll all come out.
Which is what Lappy's there for.
Yeah, exactly. And I hate that people are like, oh, he needs to get out,
I think he's phenomenal.
He's phenomenal. And he works his bag off. Like, I remember skating at the Wells Fargo, right? And I'm like skating there in the mornings at the Wells Fargo, and I look up and Lappy's running steps, and I'm like, he's putting in the effort like a Brindamore does. You know what I mean?
Because if you see that your coach is working harder than you
better be doing twice as much. At least
almost 50, and he's outrunning me. Like, I'm a professional athlete.
100%.
You're supposed to feel that way. That's what, man, Jaromir Jagr.
Yeah.
And I mean this honestly.
The presence.
Actually, to go back on what I was saying about Niskanen, and Niskanen's not that guy, but he is a very common, like, nothing rattles Niskanen.
No.
He did not get rattled.
No.
Ever. And having said that, he earned that over years of being in the NHL. He got traded a couple times, right? It's not like he was an infallible player. But we are missing some of that, and I think maybe it's spiraling. They are working on a deal, right? Like, they did get $1 million here.
Yeah.
They didn't do that for no reason.
No, absolutely not.
They're doing it to bring somebody on. Do you think that even somebody like Dennis Savard, right? I honestly don't even know if that's possible. I don't think Goligoski is going to get the job done.
No, and again, like, even a Savard is a good shutdown D guy.
I prefer Eric Stahl, honestly, at this point.
Like, it's one of those things where, like, you could add a Savard. He's not going to hurt you ever, right? He's a good, solid defenseman, knows his role, doesn't do too much, right? And I think the biggest thing is on that D core, if we're specifically focusing on them, because that's kind of been the big issue, right? Is you really do, maybe it's not this year, but you need someone to play who can play with Provorov, right?
Yeah.
So, we talked about it, like, it doesn't have to be a stud. So I'll use the example of Pronger and Carl. Carl was by no means an absolute stud, but when he played with Chris Pronger, he complimented him well. So, again, for a Dennis Savard, Savard to slide in here, right? Maybe he does compliment Provorov well. I don't know.
He would.
And he probably would, right?
At least as well as Braun.
Absolutely. Well, better, I would say, than Braun, right? Yeah.
He's got more of a two-way game.
Absolutely.
And that's where Braun really lacks.
Little more physical, too. Like, Braun's just a smart defenseman, right? That's his forte.
I did see that Nashville is already saying they're not moving Ekholm.
Well, because they're making a run right now, right? Yeah. They're in a playoff spot.
Exactly.
I watched them last night against the Stars. And it was they played good hockey. Like, I was watching their game, and I watched that Buffalo game, kind of like the condensed versions of the games. Yeah. And just watching the Buff game and the Flyers game versus the Stars and Nashville game was like, these teams are on it. And the Stars aren't even playing well, right? But they're on it. They're, like, still dialed in. It just looks so much different.
Everything is so strange this year. Let me ask you this, okay? So let's say, I'm going to go a little off script here. So let's get interesting with this. So you're Chuck Fletcher, your team is losing. The city's pretty down on your team, okay? you had a plan going into next season. You have 3 defensemen you were planning on protecting.
Right.
You're not going to deviate from that protection plan. Most likely, you're not going to do 4 defensemen and 4 forwards. You're going to want to protect your forwards. You have a bunch of guys who are excluded from it. You're fine to keep all your monster contracts. Most people probably won't want to touch anyway, even like JVR. Even if he's great, nobody's making money.
No.
So they're going to be risk taking that stuff. Do you see an opportunity here where a team like Arizona is broke? They have somebody like Oliver Ekman-Larsson, right? They probably don't really want to get rid of him. He probably doesn't want to leave. Having said that, you have 3 young stud defensemen. You're not going to move 2 of them, right? You have an option to move either Sanheim or Myers. I'm not saying I want to do this.
Right.
But for somebody like, if you believe in Ekman-Larsson, and I don't know if I do, but you could say that, right? They want to save money, right? So they get somebody like Phil Myers who's locked up super cheap. Again, I'm not saying I want to do this.
Right.
But
or it's even possible.
Right. I would imagine if a player like that is available, a package around Myers, a first, and probably another pretty good prospect or type of player. But again, they'd have to keep the money low on this because Arizona's broke. So you'd have to definitely give a first and Myers, I think. Probably would be enough for Larson. Is that something you'd be interested in? Could potentially change your locker room. You're grabbing a captain and a very talented young defenseman.
I mean,
not young, but he's definitely in his prime. He's got 5-6 years left.
Yeah, in his prime. I mean, that's a lot different than when they brought Pronger. And I'll go back to that Pronger. He was a little older.
I would prefer that situation.
But look what he did to the locker room, right? He changed that team, and he gave them an identity. Is OEL that guy? I don't know because I don't watch him enough. I don't think he's that guy. But is he a hell of a defenseman? Yes. Yeah. Would he help the team? Yes. Would he bring a different look to the team? Yes, because now when you're going up against second lines and even third lines who could play nowadays, you have a 1-2-3 punch where you're like, whoop.
You might not even play him with Provorov, but it doesn't matter. You can just give Provorov less
He can run his own line. He can run his own pairing, right?
Exactly.
So we're talking about like having a Savard to complement Provorov. All he needs is a guy to complement him because he can do that much. Right. So it's tough because, and I love the Swede defensemen, so I'm just
that's why
I'm biased to it as well because I just think they're so smart. And people say he's got the smarts like a Lidstrom, like he plays that type, not as talented maybe, but plays that type of game. So I mean, it's a tough call because again, like you said, you don't want to lose a Myers who had such promise last year and had all this potential, and it's just really it's a tough call.
I'll be honest, I don't think the Flyers are going to do that.
No.
I think they're going to try to bring in an older veteran defenseman past his prime, like Pronger was, who was still exceptional when he got here, but again, will carry himself. Like when we brought in Darian Hatcher. Right. Like we need a guy who, even if he's not at the top of his game still, even like a guy like...
He's effective.
We're not going to get him, but Ryan Getzlaf type of guy. If we can find a guy who's in his late 30s even, I'll take him. Which kind of upsets me when you think back to the offseason. We had an opportunity to bring guys like this in here, and Fletcher chose not to. And he did say it was his.
He did.
I actually agree. I think he is the most responsible for what is happening right now.
Yeah, and bringing in Gustafsson, which you had a very similar player.
His worst decision so far.
And to his point, like he called himself out on it, right? But it's just interesting because maybe they just thought he had more of a defensive side of his game and he wasn't just total offense. I mean, watching him. So. Yeah, I just don't know what they saw in that. But there were other.
I think they were being. This is what I talk about, which a lot of fans will talk about. They were being reactive to their current season. Yeah. And their power play had issues. So they're like, oh, let's bring in a power play guy, right? But you shouldn't really be thinking that way, in my opinion.
And even the first few games, he did look decent, right? I mean, in that Pittsburgh game, he had 2 assists on the first 2 shots. He did have that. You're like, okay,
here's my problem then. This is how we go back to AV. Is why is everything getting picked apart now? Or maybe we just don't really know what we're talking about, and we're like, he's not really picking them apart. He's just trying to be he's trying to just get them going. What else do you do? How many conversations have they had that we don't hear?
Exactly. I think you just hit it spot on. How many more conversations can you have about effort, attention to detail, and that type of stuff before something has to change, right? Whether
what's going on with Sanheim and Myers? They're getting beat.
They're
getting beat physically. They're making silly mistakes.
I go back to the one, I think it was in the New York game, right? Myers was stuck in the corner. He had an out up the boards. He tries to reverse the puck. There's a Ranger player right there, catches it, puts it in front. There's no chance for the goaltender.
I remember Jones even saying at the time, he was like, where's the communication?
Yep. Exactly. Hey, someone's behind you. Maybe it's that. Again, we're not on the
So we don't
ring.
see that on the ice, and I'm like thinking that in my head. I'm like, well, isn't that a coaching problem?
Yeah, it could be.
And I keep thinking about that, and I'm like, I agree with all the criticism on every player. You can pick them apart, but at the end of the day, I'm like, yeah, but this stuff is like, this is all like systems.
They're not responding, right?
They're not responding.
They're not responding to whatever the message is being translated, and that's like you said. We're gonna see. Hopefully, we see a trend the other way, and the boys pick it back up, and we can kind of see this like lull come back up, right? And we can get back into Flyers hockey having an identity, because last year they had an identity. Like they were a team that other teams feared. They're like, if we make mistakes, they're going to bury it. They're going to hurt us.
I think people are going to get annoyed at me for saying this, but I think next year they're going to be sick.
Yeah, they probably will. They probably will. It's just Flyers, typical Flyers, like, they'll just be nasty next year.
Even one of, okay, let's talk about Hart for a second.
Yeah, let's go.
I know that there are people who probably think this, but there are people there who definitely think Carter Hart's like a bust or something like that. I'm like laughing right now.
He's not Carson Wentz.
Well, yeah, dude. And again, we have Lance, and I think he used more of a catchy title because he had a really well. Again, he's just talking about the head games the players go through. So I'm not like knocking on Lance, but Steve Mason's thrown out there.
Oh yeah.
And I get it. It's like you want to go back to these moments where we had, it's like trauma in a way.
Yeah, it is.
You're like traumatized by it. It's like you think everybody's Lindros, right?
Yeah.
Like you see these moments and you're like, oh, not
He's
again.
never gonna rebound. Yeah.
Not again. But even Pelle Lindbergh went to the minors after having a great season.
Yeah.
It happens. He's not. I said this over and over again. He wasn't supposed to be here to begin with.
No.
So if you see him struggling, don't panic. It's irrelevant. It's irrelevant.
It's irrelevant.
He's way ahead of the other goalies.
And so this goes back to the AV thing, not to keep cycling back to AV because again, it's not that I have anything.
we're ripping everybody.
Yeah, I'm nothing against AV, but the fact that he and Kevin Weeks said this on NHL Network that he called him out about his work ethic. He needs to get working harder. He needs to put the effort in. Needs to put the time in. Carter Hart's never been a guy that we've ever thought didn't work hard, didn't pay attention to detail. So on the other side, like you're saying, he's gonna fix it. Right?
Yeah.
He's going to fix it.
Absolutely.
There's nobody anybody who knows anything about goaltending will tell you that it is the biggest mental, or half of it, or more than half of it.
He said 90%.
More mental.
I think Carter Hart's quote is 90%.
And especially, for me being a goalie, when you give up the first shot, you're only thinking, oh my God, don't give up another one. You're not thinking, all right, I'm just making the next save. You're thinking kind of negative, glass half empty. Don't give up another one.
Yeah.
And I think with Carter Hart specifically, he's so young. He's, 22 years old?
Yeah.
So he still has so many great years ahead of him that he's going to bounce back. The practice, I think him being scratched was actually a good thing. I think he can get on the rink, purely practice, work with his goalie coach,
think they did
work with the with the taxi squad, get shots from good players that are still good players, still have NHL qualities about them, you know what I mean? Get good shots from them, work on the things that they're noticing that he's getting picked apart on, and move on. And really where it came down to, we never said Carter Hart was having a bad year before that outdoor game. I think that outdoor game's where everything kind of blew up.
Yeah.
And we're like, whoa, what's going on here? He's getting beat the same shot 3 times.
I think what he's going through is what a lot of the other guys are going through is their confidence is shot.
It's confidence. That's it.
It's
100%.
You're watching, he has to make the saves he's being asked to make are not, he's being left alone. We saw these Rangers get, that is a team issue.
Yep.
So, you can beat up on his confidence. He's 22 years old. Fine.
Yep.
I'm sorry that bothers people, but you can do that to adults.
100%.
Brian Elliott is a machine at this point.
Yeah, seasoned.
That guy has been in so many situations, it's ridiculous. Alex Lyon also is an adult, right? And he's got nothing to lose. So if he gets lit up 6 goals, he's like, well, at least I'm playing in the NHL.
Yeah, exactly.
You know what I mean? I'm getting my shot. I'm getting my chances, right? So you can build on that, and I don't think, I saw, what is it, Jonathan Bernier rumors you said?
Yeah.
That doesn't even make any sense to me. Bernier, and I don't,
For what? Why would they grab him? Yeah.
Are you trading Lyon in response? Are you going to keep... I don't understand.
Is it a Band-Aid or, yeah, exactly.
But he's not going to play over Elliott.
No, exactly.
So what's the point?
Unless you plan on benching Hart for the rest of the year and you think, we'll talk about
extremely unlikely.
Very unlikely. And we'll talk about kind of AV, Giroux not at practice. People are freaking out about that too. Like, what's going on? They're probably having a meeting saying like...
Or they're stressed as shit and they're saying,
we need an off day, whatever it is. But, with everything being so condensed, it could have very well been Fletch sitting with those two going, guys, where are we actually? Like, I see what's going on in the rink. We know what's going on. We're frustrated.
Maybe they want
where
to
are
go
we actually?
Have dinner and fucking talk
exactly.
it out.
Like, do we need to add pieces to this to help you out? Or is this something that, it's just a fluke year?
They're going to make a trade.
Yeah. And that's what you're thinking, right?
I mean, you look at the reaction of benching kids and playing veterans.
Yeah.
And it's not just veterans, you know what I mean? It's also like I actually think I don't have a problem with what he did because it won, and as long as it pays off on the ice, it means you pull the right levers. I'm not sitting here going like, how could you bench Patrick and Farabee and like I know what the situation is. In fact, I would argue throw that as a line together.
Sure.
And
at
get
some
that
point make them figure it out.
I mean, it worked really well with Danny Briere, Hartnell, and Ville Leno, right? It was like. I've said that over and over again. Put struggling guys together, see if they can work it out today. Empathize with one another. You're not shitting on the other line mate for screwing up because you all know what you're going through.
And we talked about this, before. Like you got to figure Lindblom and Patrick are going to need a year of hockey to get back to where they.
AV's being easy on them.
Yeah. So for them to sit, is it really hurting them? No. One
It'll
game,
probably help them.
Yeah, it'll help them. They could watch it. They'll probably get that Like, I think when Lindblom got set last time, he came out, 3 points in the next game, 2 points in the next game.
Yep.
So, to that point, there are buttons you could push to motivate people, even if it's a benching or something like that. So, the hard thing, I think, is 100% the right move. He needs the practice. He needs the work. They're not getting a lot of that right now. I think he can go back and get back to his craft. And when he comes back, the Carter Hart that we saw that was making those unbelievable saves, he'll be back to doing that again. I specifically remember in the Rangers game, there was a 2-on-1. He didn't need to make the save, but if he did make that save, that whole tide of that game is going to change, right? They go down 3-rip instead of going down 2-rip with a big save from your goalie, and that motivates the boys. So I think, with the Hart thing to kind of wrap it up, I think he will bounce back. The break's good for him. I think that, him having Elliott is a huge, huge plus. Probably one of the main reasons they kept him around.
Absolutely.
And you heard him talk about Hart, earlier in the season when he wasn't playing great. He's a young kid.
All class.
All class. That guy's, even yesterday, he had a smile during his interview yesterday, which is like...
I know, I've come to like him so much more.
So much, dude.
His dad bod, attitude.
Even to his kids, the boys are asking, when's your kids coming in the locker room? We want to see them and stuff. He's a dad of the team, right?
Yeah.
You just said it perfectly.
And quite frankly, I think that's kind of what this team is missing a little bit of.
Yeah. They need a dad.
Yeah, they need... Well, I mean... It's interesting because you wonder, was even Niskanen enough last year? We fell short anyway. Tampa Bay goes out and gets a guy like Blake Coleman. What are the odds that guy ever gets intimidated by anybody?
Right, yeah.
Almost slim to
Same
none.
with Goudreau, right? On that team, right? Fighting people, and he's this tall.
That's what I'm saying. It's almost like slim to none. And Brad Marchand.
Yeah.
We hate him. Why do we hate him?
Because he's a pest.
And he's never going to be intimidated by any single person on your team on any night. And every single night he is going to be annoying to you.
Absolutely, and I'm hoping TK, I always kind of saw them.
It took Marchand time to become.
It took him time.
Was.
I think TK will get that back as well. He's another guy who's been struggling, obviously, but I think he'll get that tenacity back. And again, why don't they have that right now? We don't know.
Young players suffer the most when this type of stuff happens.
Yes, their confidence. We'll keep going back to confidence. That should be the name of this pod. And confidence.
It's interesting because I think actually Claude Giroux has been playing well.
Yeah, he's been playing awesome. He came in shape. They said it was the best shape they've seen him in years.
Well, that's why I was freaking out, and I said on the last podcast, because I've been talking about it, and if people listen to me regularly, you see I'll say lineup stuff, and then AV will do it 2-3 weeks later, and I'm like, what took you so long? But they finally put Giroux and Couturier back together, brought the comeback. I'm like, why did you wait?
Yeah.
I was like, he was already playing exceptional.
And if the team's playing bad, what's it going to hurt if you experiment a little bit in these games? You know what I mean? And break things up.
They have been in a weird way. The experimentations are there, but it's almost like... I feel like they don't see... Let me say this, actually. It reminds me of when Hackstall, before he got fired, started coaching scared.
Yeah.
Where you start putting in guys like Nate Prosser in.
Yeah.
Because Nate Prosser is predictable.
Yeah. You knew what you're getting with him.
That again, we saw what happened with Friedman. Like I don't think that AV was looking at Friedman and went, I don't like this kid. Get him out of this locker. I highly doubt it had anything to do with that. I think he literally went to actually probably Chuck Fletcher and said, you gave me a bunch of kids.
Yeah.
I have this kid and this kid and this kid, and none of them can just play the simple plays.
Yeah.
I don't have anybody who can do that. I had Niskanen. Now I don't have that. All right, we play more risk game. Bring me somebody else. And I think AV is just like, I'll do Prosser.
Yeah.
I'll take him. I need
in
more
on
vets.
Yep.
Give me the vet. What other vet do we have, really? Derek Pouliot?
Yeah, I mean...
They're not going to call up Igor Zamula, not in the status of the way the team is playing.
Yeah, there's no point. And the Phantoms are doing fairly well, right? So, why would you break that up?
So here, let's go back real quick, actually, to what I was saying about Myers. I think there's a good chance that Cam York is NHL ready. The likelihood that he'll need too much time in the AHL, in my opinion, is unlikely.
Right.
And again, I say that. Look at what Farabee did, okay? This is the same program. He's a little bit younger.
Yeah.
He's a little bit younger at the same age group. But again, look at the way USA won. They won with him leading a defensive-style game.
Yeah.
That is the type of guys who make the NHL early. So do they maybe move a young defenseman and go, well, we have Cam York coming anyway? Maybe Travis Sanheim does become the piece that gets moved.
Expandable.
But again, if you bring in a guy like, I don't think this is happening, but a guy high name caliber like Roman Yossi, right, which you're not getting. But again, if that type of deal is available, do you go to that and then go, hey, we have Cam York coming anyway, the D's young enough?
Yeah, I think it all depends on where you see your team. Do you see your team and I think the Flyers do see this in a win now mode. Their window is here, right? The next couple years, 3-4 years, whatever you want to call it.
Well, they don't know if they're going to have a Giroux again.
Exactly. So it depends on where do you see your team. And I think at this year's draft and the expansion and everything, I think that's when you're going to really see moves being made. I think we talked about this. It's going to be summer moves. There may be a move with the whole Ghost thing that's going on right now. Maybe there's an in-season move there that's smaller. But I think the summer is where
Ghost might be with the team, right?
Yeah,
that might be more of a move that just to save money.
Right. So I think you're going to see a big out-of-season move and shift. And I think that's what we all hope too, right? Like, when's the last time we had a blockbuster and we're super excited about someone coming in?
Well, there's going to be a lot of movement this summer.
Oh, for sure.
Like I said, teams are broke. Right? They're going to be looking to move money around. Seattle's going to come in. They're going to take a bunch of money off people's hands. So they're going to be happy, but they're not going to take that much money off people's hands, right? They're probably going to avoid a lot of these big contracts, and teams are not going to be that interested in giving up assets anymore to hold on to players.
For sure.
Because they're going to be willing to move money.
Right.
So it's going to be a whole different type of expansion than it was.
It's going to be a fun summer
with Vegas.
For hockey.
Yeah, it's going to be probably pretty crazy to
and
some
a short
degree.
one too, right?
Yes.
They're going to try to start things back up. So
well, that's kind of the thought here. So if you're not abandoning the season, but if you even go okay, well, let's say we're a playoff team, anything can happen, but maybe you don't see yourself as a championship team. And you're like, well, I want to make a move now that'll get me into next season and beyond.
Exactly, because I'll ask you this question kind of. Do you think there's a lot of teams out there that are on the cusp of playoffs or, need to add a piece that are going out there and going to be making aggressive moves at the trade deadline?
I think only the teams who aren't losing money fiscally can do that. I think the teams, even that are good, but are losing money this year, probably won't get the thumbs
Florida.
up.
Look at Florida.
Correct.
They just lost Ekblad.
And they
can't do anything. It's there's just nothing they could do.
And they spent a butt ton of money on what's his name, Quenneville, and Bob and all that stuff. So again, maybe they will, but I think that's where ownership will be like, well, can you win with what you have?
Yeah.
Because I'm not making any money on this team.
And he's the
this
goat.
year.
He can. I love Quenneville. He's the man.
I mean, look, it took him time. Look, they were a bottom team last year, right? It takes time, and I wouldn't be surprised if they take a dip next year too.
Yeah.
For whatever reason, maybe for the same reasons that we're going through, right?
Yeah.
The Rangers are a young team too. Look at them fluctuating.
100%.
Nobody doubts they have talent.
No, the Rangers are going to be scary good in a couple years.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting because I don't think these divisions will stay, but I do think it is time for the Flyers to make a move.
Yeah.
We have plenty of young talent, tons, plenty of assets, plenty of first round picks within the system. We're good enough to make a move. Even you saw Eric Stahl was a third and a fifth.
Right.
And again, I'm not saying Eric Stahl is what we need to do. But if we're just giving up a good young prospect and a first-round pick to bring a star player in here, this is maybe not now, but like we said, this offseason, we're in that window now. To win, we're competing against good teams. There's a fluctuation now within the division where it's kind of evening out.
Yep.
So there is no clear-cut best team. This is the time to try to get aggressive. Washington got aggressive. It's paying off, right? Like, Zdeno Chara was available. I don't know if he was available to us, but why didn't we bring a guy like that in? You know, that's we could.
He's the guy.
We would kill for him right now.
He is the vet that you're talking about,
Yes.
right? Unfortunately, maybe he wanted to go to Washington. From what I've heard, he wanted to go to Washington.
Right, I heard that as well. Yes.
So it's those are dime a dozen though, right? Like you mentioned, Getzlav, his name's been kind of rumored here and there, but those guys are a dime a dozen. They're tough to find, and it's a shame because you know that this roster could win with what they have. And again, we just are going to hope and pray that one of these games that they claw out these wins like the last one, you're hoping that that's the game that they're like, oh, the coin's flipped. We're back to Flyers hockey. You know?
I mean, if they win today, that's 3 wins in a row.
I know. It doesn't feel like it, though. It doesn't feel like it.
But what if they win the next one after that? And I think the next one's against the Islanders, okay? So let's just say, theoretically, I'm not saying this is going to happen. I have no idea. But if they play really well tonight, I'll at least be enthusiastic they can win the next game.
Absolutely.
And all of a sudden, they win 4 in a row.
Yeah. And again, we're singing a different tune, right?
Yes.
And those win streaks that they put together in the past, different team, different makeup, 100%. They've been gutted out wins. They've been hard wins, we'll call them.
Right.
And not the cool thing, but the thing I look at, you look at who's in the playoffs right now. You got the Islanders, Penguins, Boston, and Washington, right? Last year, the Flyers owned Washington. This year, I think it's been the other way, right?
Yeah.
But
of late, we've been getting owned by everybody.
But yeah, touche. But like even the Islanders, they've won games against the Islanders who they struggled with last year. And
they did really well against every team in the division but the Islanders last year.
Yeah, exactly. And you're looking at Pittsburgh this year, it's been 50-50 split with Pittsburgh. So you're looking at these teams, you've seen them beat these teams throughout the year, so you know they could play with those teams. Of course. And, Flyers have always been kind of that team that when they play a last-place team or a basement team, they, kind of throw a clunker here and there.
Yes.
Which happens. You always play down to your competition no matter what anybody says. As a player, you always play down to it.
Yes.
There's going to be those times where you see, Edmonton when they pumped Ottawa for, 8 goals in a period or whatever it was. So it's just one of those things where, again, I'm still hopeful that they can pull something out. And I'm not saying that they're going to win the Stanley Cup this year. I'm just hoping that they give us some more hockey and they start playing better hockey. That's all I want to see is just better hockey.
I'm not really interested in picking high at all, and especially this year where, I mean, if you guys even listen to Brent Fleur, they have no idea what's happening in this draft. And I would expect that from everybody else. So if anybody tells you who's going where, they don't know.
You're not getting any sample sizes or anything.
They don't know if half of these kids matured and will be considerably better. The Flyers could end up getting the best player in the draft at 25 for all you know this year.
They had a year off. Literally, a year off. And even this year's
OHL's still not playing.
Still not playing. Yeah.
How many players from the OHL are not playing that are older,
eligible,
a year and a half older? You haven't even seen them play.
It's ridiculous.
It's going to be a very weird offseason, so being out of the playoffs is not really interesting. All right, let's talk about Morin real quick. Ironically, I thought him and Ghost looked good together. I was enjoying it.
Yeah, they complement each other on paper.
It was the line that we were... Again, I was not expecting Ghost to be waived and benched. Which tells me, obviously we've heard some rumors. You've heard a bunch of rumors about Ghost. We don't really know what happened.
Yeah.
But I do love. I made a video, the journey of Sam Morin. I love his story. I love watching him score that goal. And I've said it for a while. In my opinion, if Sam Morin can get his game back, if he can continue to doing what he's doing, he is a better version of Haig. Everything that Haig brings, Morin brings the exact same thing. Only more intense, bigger, stronger, harder to move off the puck. Yep. Hits harder, meaner, fights harder.
Got the reach.
Yeah, exactly. Doesn't mean I want Haig gone, but Haig is my number 7 and Morin is my number 6 in my mind, right? He's just massive. And I do think his skill set has been covering up for some of Ghost's shortcomings, which is maybe why we didn't see it and why AV, was kind of harsh on him anyway. And maybe they're like, oh, we'll just put him with Gus or whatever. What do you think? What do you think about Samuel Morin?
So when he was put on forward, I was just like, "This is just not."
I didn't like that.
He's not like.
It was okay.
Yeah, he's an NHL player, so I would never say he's not coordinated enough or anything. But I appreciate the willingness to want to get him in the lineup and say, you know what, this is going to be a tough division. We do need some grit. We need someone like that in the team. How our D looks right now, we're going to roll with it because It was just minus Niskanen, and we're seeing it as, a nice little, or it's a big piece that we're missing, right? But him in the games that he's played has gotten better and better each game.
Yep.
And that's just reps. That's it.
Yep.
It's reps. He hasn't played in 2 years almost, right? Really. So you're talking about just him getting reps, him getting more comfortable, him getting adjusted to speed. But what's awesome about Moran is that he's so big that he can cover a lot of space. He, in the D zone, you look up, if you're in the corner and you see him, you don't see the net. You don't see the guy backdoor.
Yep.
So I think his just physical attributes can kind of make up for some of the lack of, high skill and things like that. And I think his energy has been awesome. I think that's probably even bigger than what he brings to the table on the ice, is he's, even in every interview when he was hurt, super positive. Human being, right? You see, it was a video with a couple practices ago. He wasn't dressed or whatever it was. He's on the bench watching the practice, whatever it was. Guys are coming off, pounding them, whatever it is. So that goes a long way as well. Every team has those type of guys, right?
Man.
A good personality guy. So I think his attitude is the right attitude that this team needs. And is he a vocal guy in the locker room? I don't know. We're not in that locker room. But I think his presence, his attitude goes a long way and is why he's in the lineup.
I think it takes time to be vocal in the locker room because I think you have to be an adult. You have to be confident enough to talk to other adults and to demand of them.
For sure.
You know what I mean? Which is why I hate when they give captaincies to kids. I despise it because I'm like, I'm not a kid anymore. So, I'm not in fantasy land that, you put the seal on the chest and the 35-year-old athlete is listening to the 19-year-old going, oh, yeah, you really know what you're talking about, kid.
It's tough.
It's just not real. Which is why I love that Claude Giroux is the captain. But I will say this, is what Morin does have that is Pronger-like, and I won't say it's his game, maybe his size,
right?
But maybe certain aspects of his game. But overall, it's really the personality, it's the confidence, it's I do think he's probably going to be a great locker room guy as he develops as well, and being okay, if you go back to the Flyers kind of turn of the season, right? Or of this season, of this little sprint, the reason they really won any games is because Sam Morin first checked 2 Rangers. I'll say it over and over again. He checked 2 Rangers at the exact same time into the boards.
Yep.
One with each arm. Definitely everybody on the Flyers locker saw that, or on the bench saw that. The entire energy, I'll go back to it. You can watch it. Entire energy on the ice changed. He then punched Brendan Lemieux in the face early, got fined for it. But he's kind of like, yo, this is enough. I'm not...
Yeah, I'm not putting up with it.
I'm not putting up with this anymore.
For sure.
Boom. Just punched you in the face, and everybody's like, wait, what just happened?
Get out of here.
Right? And then all of a sudden, the Flyers win a couple games now, and the energy has kind of turned around, and it's like we were kind of asking for that. I do think Morin brought some of that a little bit. Now, it shouldn't be on him. This should be a team-wide thing. We saw Lindblom fighting the other day, but it's like, why are they not doing it together? I don't know.
Yeah.
Still, but...
Again, it's a confidence thing. We're going to keep coming back to it, right? Because at the end of the day, when you don't have your confidence, everything else could be going, but it's going to hurt you worse, right? It's going to be the biggest missing piece to that puzzle, right? But I do like that he's in the lineup. I'm glad from a personal perspective. He's a draft pick, a Flyers draft pick that you want to see succeed. So I'm happy he's getting his touches in, he's getting his time in. So it's just nice to that someone's doing it, right? You want to see more guys doing it. Hopefully that does become a domino effect, and you start seeing guys take after some of his personality traits, some of his play on the ice, his tenacity on the ice.
Yeah. So let's talk about trade rumor here before we close up here. I brought up Scott Lawton as a potential trade target. Again, he's going to be UFA. You're not doing that great. You need some other stuff. Do you see Scott Lawton? Again, it would be a package deal, but if you want to bring in a bigger name, and maybe that's not, you're not trading him for Savard. That's not what you're doing. You're trading draft picks for Savard.
Yeah.
But do you think that could be a potential, maybe something to work in? Maybe Scott Lawton moves this summer? Because, again, is he even getting re-signed?
It's tough because you love Lawton.
Yes.
You love what
he they want to keep
right?
him.
He's like our poor man's Richie, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And I know you love Richards, right?
Exactly.
So kind of reminds you of that. It's tough, but he is kind of like, if you're going to trade anybody and get decent value back, I think a lot of other teams see the value in Scott Lawton.
Exactly.
So when you look at trades, it's not just like everyone thinks, oh, why don't they just trade for this guy or just go out there and grab Getzlaff, like you were saying, right? Like, okay, what are you going to have to give up for him, right? Is it going to be worth getting him? Or, go out and get this person. So I think in the market that there is, he's a good player, third line center. He can go up and down in the lineup. Teams are that he's a desirable player, affordable, right?
Yes.
He's a desirable player. He has skill and shows flashes of it. Great in shootouts, great on breakaways, things like that. Good PKer. So it's a shame that he might be the guy that you see traded, because I personally love his game.
Yeah.
But I think he is your best bet if you were gonna get something back in return, right?
Now, typically, I will say if you think you're a really good team, you want to just add players. You don't want to remove. But I look at the fact he's a UFA, and if the Flyers are planning for next season too, then you're kind of, okay, we're going to lose him anyway, potentially. We're not, we could choose to re-sign him in the summer anyway, right? And now we can try to ship him off to a team that maybe needs him, and, we could get that type of player that we're looking for
sure,
potentially.
But it's, like you said, it's an addition by subtraction thing. So
and you're also rocking the
only
locker
way.
room.
Yeah.
But maybe you want to rock the locker room.
Yeah, it could be.
You know what I mean?
And there are scenarios like that where maybe there is the oddball out in the locker room or something like that. He just doesn't seem like that guy.
I don't think he'd be the guy you want to make an example
I think it more so comes down to what he brings on the ice, and he does have obviously a locker room presence as well, but his gameplay on the ice is transferable for any team in the NHL. I'll say, so that's what makes him desirable.
I will say this, that not that I think they should move him, but I think, and not that I think he's the problem in any way, but Jake Voracek